Here, we're going to highlight how the kinds of movement we were talking about, them being flat ground, that involves controlling for variables like map geometry. Now, we talked about map geometry a little bit when we talked about how Biscuit was holding really close to the ledge, and how when Storm, the ballpoint player, fell from the ledge, that they were forced to just stay on that trajectory and be in midair that whole time. But here, we'll be seeing a much more deliberate use of cover, and how you can use that instead of necessarily your movement to make players miss shots, to kind of put things in your opponent's way, so that even though multiple enemy players are in range, effectively you only have a 1v1 for at least a short amount of time until they move. It's a way to force them to move, a way to take initiative away from them, because you're denying them the ability to hit their shots at all. So Bagel has taken a relatively unsafe jump into the enemy side. You can see on the top of the screen, this was a 1v4. It is now a 1v3 because they were able to catch the Snipe Rider. But this is a coordinated setting. Now that the Snipe Rider goes down, every single member of the enemy team is going to be turning and looking this way. And they're all splatter shots, as it turns out. So now this is a situation where Bagel knows that he's about to get attacked from multiple different directions, and that he's got to cut some of those directions off. If multiple players are able to shoot at Bagel at the same time, he loses every time. Doesn't matter if he hits his shots perfectly, because his opponents are going to get pretty close to hitting their shots perfectly, but also be doing twice as much damage to him. So he won't get one of them down before they combined are able to get him down. He needs to make it so that he's only fighting one of them at a time. So in order to do that, he's going to set the fight up around this pillow that's right next to him. He's going to make it so that it appears to his opponents that he's going to rotate to the right, and then he's going to use the smoke screen of this bomb that he puts here, which serves a double purpose of blocking someone from rushing him to the left, and also smoke screening him when he goes back to the left unexpectedly. He's going to use the combination of the cover and that bomb to control that entire zone on the left-hand side, create a great window for himself to get a fight on the left, and then turn to the right and still have that piece of cover ready to go to keep him safe from everybody else. So you can see here, he made a move to the right, and he put the bomb here. So what looks like it happened to this player is that he swam to the right, when what actually happened was he went right briefly, just enough to break line of sight, and then came back the other way. So now these shots are missing, and everybody on the right-hand side is going to be irrelevant for a while because they're either out of range or behind cover. And so now it's a 1v1, and he has initiative on this player because this player guessed wrong about where he's trying to go. So this is actually a fight that he can take, and he wins it here completely cleanly. There is a chance there for a couple of those shots to actually hit, but he's able to make, I think, those shots either overshoot or he moves back to the right. I didn't quite see.
I think he moved back to the right after the kill.
Okay, yeah. So it's more that he stops than that he actually actively moves right, but these shots overshoot either way, and he gets that player down, only taking a little bit of damage.
And another big note again, just like the ballpoint, just like the jumping warning in the last video, the opposing shot dropped, which means that he's effectively, again, he's forced to stand still against what Bagel does. So Bagel has not only initiative in terms of fighting because this guy whiffed his shots, but now the enemy also can't really move anywhere as well.
Because notice that even though the player had yellow ink at first when he was dropping, as soon as Bagel starts shooting back at him, this all gets painted. And so he lands on enemy ink, and now all he can do is aim and try to shoot. He can't really move in response to this. So then the bomb goes off, and that's going to smoke screen a little bit, so Bagel can take advantage of that brief moment to reposition if he wants to. And he's recognizing that now this player is around the other side of the bumper, and so he's going to have to move in response to that. So he chooses to cut this player off by just moving to the other side of the bumper. And so now, even if this player does move, Bagel's going to have a little bit of initiative because Bagel's going to see this player and be able to react to them. Here's a little bit of pre-firing. He doesn't want an opponent to be able to push him from this direction because then he wouldn't really have anywhere to run. He would be pinched between these two players. So he's painting this to prevent that from basically nullifying the effect of the cover.
There were three splatter shots that fought him, and I think the third one is where Bagel pre-fired that spot.
Exactly.
So I think he was expecting somebody to rush him at that exact point, which is why he was pre-firing.
Like, whether or not that player is actually coming at him right at that moment, he needs to cover this either way so that he knows that that player can't do that. So, two birds with one stone, right? Either he doesn't try, but now it's harder for him to if he decides to in the future, or he does try and he gets pre-fired. And Bagel has the time to do this because he bought himself that time by playing Ring Around the Rosie. So now that he's satisfied that that's clear, he realizes that this player is backed up, maybe behind the cover over here, to the point where he's basically in an isolated 1v1 with this remaining player. And so he decides to go on the offensive and use this piece of cover to go after this player, because that player is not going to see him approach as he comes from behind the cover. Manipulating line of sight has been a big factor in both of these two engagements so far. And then again, you see that he's firing shots right on this spot. That might be in part to paint his own feet, but that's probably also in part because he's expecting resistance to come from this direction. It'd be really easy for an opposing player to just right side peek around this corner. And so he's worried about, in the time that he takes this player out, this player moving around to do that to him. So he's pre-firing that, but now he knows where the enemy player is, and it's just a 1v1 from here. It's interesting to me there that he even actually takes a hit, but stands his ground anyway, just kind of stands still, knowing that he can kind of move behind the cover on reaction if he needs to, but that he's got right side peek and it's harder for the opponent to hit their shots. So now he's just chasing this player. And he's able to kind of track, because all of this is painted his color. So knowing where the opponent is and knowing that he only has so many places he can go, like, it's very visible. He probably couldn't chase this opponent quite as brazenly if this were painted more the enemy color. But because he can very clearly track just through his own color ink where this player is going, they end up getting cornered. And this is just a shot that misses.
Panic. It's just trying to trade. He does trade, actually.
No, he whiffed the last shot.
Well, he trades 0.
Oh, he got somebody else.
Right.
Was there a jump coming into him there?
I think 0 just rushed him and died.
Oh, 0's coming up over the top there. I see. Okay. Looks like... It's hard to say whether it's the bomb or the shot that gets him, but yeah. And here, Bagel is moving forward a little bit, which I recommend this at one point in the previous video, talking about moving diagonally instead of just moving around in a circle, because that changes kind of the vertical that the opponent has to aim at as well as the horizontal in some cases. It also changes the rate at which you're strafing around them. And that sometimes can mess people up. Here, it's especially smart that he's moving forward because the Zuka shot is kind of likely to overshoot because of the arc that it fires at. So because he's moving closer to it, it's more likely that shot overshoots. So forward and a little bit to the side is the last thing that the Zuka player here is expecting. And so there we go. We have another quad.
I think one important note as well, if you go to the third kill, if you're going strictly by like the diagrams that we gave, the player here moving around the pillow would technically be at the advantage, right? because he's moving while Bagel's just sitting still. But the way that the enemy player moved was too close and too straight, like too predictable for Bagel, to the point where you can just like pre-fire it pretty easily. So if you like let the kill play out, you'll see what I mean.
Right.
Right. So he's like right on top of Bagel at that point. So it's like any movement is, it doesn't really matter because it's just too close and like walking straight into him.
Right. Being close to an opponent, makes the angle that you can aim at a lot bigger. They're a bigger target effectively when they're closer to you. And so that's something that you've got to be careful about. I talked about a play where you cross up a blaster, where you go from one side of them to being on the other side of them. And that can definitely throw their aim off, but also if you do it a little bit too early, what it can also do is just give them a really easy direct because you're right in front of them and the hitbox is just too big for them to miss. So that's also something to be careful about. Swinging a little bit wider outside the bumper here might have been the safer choice. And it also would have given the player right side peek advantage instead of just putting themselves all the way out there completely exposed. What they could have maybe done was try to right side peek, keep half of their body behind cover, and keep themselves a little bit more difficult to target to hit as they aimed. Thanks for helping to break that down, Ren. Hopefully that gives you a better, practical understanding of how these can be applied in combat, and gives you some thinking for considering your own gameplay and how you want to be moving relative to your opponent while you're fighting against them.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Catch you later, everybody.